one of my main goals is to build a base of allies with a personal connection to literacy. We talked about MADD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They have a personal connection to that issue. How do you get people to have a personal connection? Because most people don't. They'll agree that it's a good issue. Yes, we need to work on it. Yes, it's important. And so some of the things that we've been doing are we have I Read Aloud events where people just read something, and it has different themes to it. We did one on Veterans Day. We did one as a fundraiser. And they read something for 2 minutes, and then they dedicate their reading, kind of like when people do walks, Walk for Cancer. They dedicate it to their grandmother or somebody they know who had cancer. We ask them to dedicate it to somebody they know who has a literacy issue or somebody who helped them with their literacy. And it's been awesome. I have to tell you, people are crying at these events. I love when people cry at literacy events because then they become, ooh, come on in, come on in. So this isn't on my website yet, but it will be soon. I'm trying to put sort of a packet together so that people could do this as fundraisers for us. Just take the whole packet and do your own I Read Aloud event at your club or your school or wherever. The other thing, we have the One Book, One New Orleans. The Young Leadership Council is our urban young professionals in the region. This is their literacy project. These are 3 of the books we've been doing for about 6 years. It's almost always a book about New Orleans. We get books into the literacy programs. But for me, it's all about getting people who are not in the literacy field talking about literacy. And so, they have fun events. They do a lot of drinking, but they talk about literacy. So we help them out, and it's always a lot of fun. That first book is about food, Gumbo Tales. This past year, what we just finished up was the autobiography of Louis Armstrong. It's the book in the middle. It's really, really good. I had never read it. And then City of Refuge, the one on the end, is a fictional book about the hurricane that came out. That was also really good. And then faith-based organizations, we're still trying to work with them because same reason they've also got the relationships of trust of people who need the services. But like I said, what we're doing with them, because what we've done so far hasn't worked, is a capacity building workshop. It's coming up in a couple of weeks for those of them who want to start literacy programs. I'll probably get a phone call every other week from a church or a nonprofit or a social service organization that wants to start a literacy program. And so how do you turn those people into advocates? Even though they may never start a literacy program, and I don't recommend that they all start literacy programs, as you all know. It's too hard. It takes too long. If you don't do a good job, people are not coming back. So what we're doing is just sort of giving them a reality check here and some toolkits, if you want to start. And here's some other things that you can do, such as support people in your congregation who are working on their literacy services. Give them rides to their class. Take care of their kids. You don't have to have a literacy program at your church. You can do something else. So I'm trying to give them a personal connection to literacy so they'll become advocates for us as well. The last section is, like I said, the engaging adult learners is where we falter the most, and what's my goal for this coming year. Some of the things that we do right now is we host a GED graduation. This is also new after the hurricane. We have 10 literacy programs that participate. We give we have postcards. The postcards we did for the first time this year, we sent everybody at the graduation sent a postcard to our governor saying adult literacy is important. I'm at a GED graduation. You need to fund this. It was awesome. Newsletters, maybe an alumni group. This is something that I'd like to work on for the coming year. And then the last 3 bullets down there are, I did a presentation like this at the Pro Literacy COABE conference. Are you familiar with COABE? It's Council on Adult Basic Education in Chicago. David Harvey, who's the president of Pro Literacy, came over to literacy from AIDS policy work in DC, and he's all about advocacy and public policy, so I'm very excited about that. We now have an office in Washington, DC for the first time ever. Can you believe it? We've never had an office for literacy in Washington, DC. And his goal also is to really raise the level of engagement among adult learners. He said it's something that we just don't do very well. I also invited someone from the Mental Health Association of Chicago and the AIDS Foundation of Chicago to come present with me, because I think those two issues have a lot in common with literacy. Stigma, lack of funding, lack of awareness, just to kind of learn from them what they do to work on that. And that's sort of some of the things that they've said. I haven't really continued this. I would like to really have better relationships with the Mental Health Association in my town, but they're all struggling too. But I just kind of want to learn. So I'm putting this out to you. If you know of some, you can connect with me as well. The AIDS Foundation of Chicago has a model for their state advocacy that I'm probably going to use in some grants that I'm writing next week. So 16 is just another thing that I got from Literacy Connexus. They have a 50 things that churches can do to further education. I just put it down to 10. But you can get the 50 on their website if you're interested. All right, any comments or questions on that? All right, we've got probably about 10 minutes left, I think, yes. So I just wanted to talk for a few minutes about messages, yes.
Ask you, please, what do you feel contributed to the establishment of the offices in Washington, D.C.?
David Harvey, the reason, because they hired someone who had advocacy as his #1 priority. That's what he did, that's all he did, that's all he needs to do. You know, like when people come in and run programs, sometimes they're good at fundraising, they're good at program development. That's his thing, advocacy. And so he talked his board and his funders into funding him. So, and it's just been within less than a year, I would say. Leadership. Any other comments on that? Yes?
I'm curious about NIFL.
Yes.
What's the effect on your program?
Minimal. I mean, it's hard. It's really sort of symptomatic rather than. I can't say that we ever got a lot from NIFL. I mean, they did some good work. NIFL, if you don't know, is the National Institute for Literacy that's going away. It's getting subsumed into the Department of Education. And it was supposed to be a place where all these agencies that had funding for literacy, Department of Education, Department of Labor, Department of Health and Human Services, came together and coordinated things for literacy, but it never quite worked out that way. So it never worked that way at the federal level, never worked that way at the state level, doesn't work that way at the local level. But they did do a lot of good research. They had funding for research. They had funding for professional development. It's really hard to say what's going to happen with those pieces of it. I don't know, because also during the Bush administration, they expanded the scope of the National Institute for Literacy to not be just about adult literacy, which it was, but lifelong literacy. So, of course, everybody on the board was now children's literacy. So, don't get me started on that. All right. Yes. Yes.
Talk a little bit about the messaging.
Yes. That's next. I will. Did you have another question before I move to messaging? Okay. Okay. If you look on page 17, this is also from that same article in The Change Agent by David Rosen, and he just wrote it so well, so I just cut and paste and put some things in there. But he has 3 assumptions that I think most people in adult literacy don't think about or don't understand or don't acknowledge. And number 1, if adult literacy were well understood, if people were in your classrooms every day and saw what you saw, it would be a funding priority in our governments, but it's not. Number 2, the way that we describe it now is that conservatives and middle-of-the-road people do not agree that it should get more government support. They agree that it's important, but not that they don't want to pay for it. And that our messages are flawed. When I tell people I work in adult literacy, does this happen to you? Great, do y'all need a volunteer? It's like, no, we really need some money. And I need a paid teacher. It's like, yes, we need you as a volunteer, but we also need this. So nobody ever asked me anything else except for volunteering. So he has 4 possible new frames. One of your plenary sessions said, think about reframing your message. 1, self-help. So it emphasizes education for people who want to do it themselves. That appeals to a larger group of people. And 2, I copy a lot of what he wrote on the people who deserve help, because I think for some people this might be controversial. People who deserve help. We all believe that everyone deserves help. However, should we use the word deserving? He said it reframes the issue for conservatives. Although they believe, and I've had this told to me, that people who did not make it in high school had their chance for free education. I've had it told to my face by a conservative friend. they will acknowledge that there are worthy exceptions. And so if you frame it that there are worthy exceptions for people who could not make it, it wasn't their choice, even though I totally believe that everyone should have the opportunity for whatever they want. If you frame it in a way that it's really fair play, giving people a helping hand who for some reason, and you can talk about you all know the reasons why people did or did not finish their education, it's just fair play. The third is investment that pays off. We use the word investment all the time, but it hasn't been persuasive, so it needs to be linked to some of the other frames. And then also accountability. That always has to be in there. Not that this is just a good thing, but we're accountable for how we spend the money, and we're accountable for the people who come into the program. So I won't do this with you, but I just put down here, I copied some messages from the United States, some from Canada, and you can do this, and I'm probably going to do this just to kind of think about, do these messages that we use talk about self-help, talk about deserving, investment, or accountability. But we won't do that now because we're running out of time. So I want to open this up, ask for any reflections that you have. If you want to talk more about the message issue, I don't have the answer to the message issue. That's what my answer is. But I like David. I think we're still looking for what that right message is, and the message keeps changing. I change it all the time. I'm constantly changing my materials, my advocacy materials, my brochures. I never print a whole lot because I'm constantly refining it, and it also depends on who I'm talking to. I'm either going to talk about the kids, or I'm going to talk about crime, or I'm going to talk about economy, depending on who I'm talking to. So, yes, and you, yes.
Yeah, as a third learner who look at the outside, I find a lot of time activate people scared to do it because they lose funding. Or I talk to other agencies who say, when top happening, well, it don't fit me, so I'm going to top out.
Right. Right. We still haven't found that way to make that connection that it does affect you. Everybody says that, but one of the speakers said this morning, get them to feel that personal connection to whatever's happening. Yes.
I'm just wondering, in your research, you can kind of see there's similarities between Canada and the United States. But did you find any countries, like I find sometimes European nations seem to be more advanced with adult literacy?
Yeah, I didn't do a whole lot. We've gotten to be friends with the people in Ireland, and they do a really good job, but they also, they had like reaction. You know, when their international adult literacy figures came out, there was reaction and money. You know, when our figures come out, nothing. In 2003, we had another one in 2003, and no reaction. And we also didn't get state and local statistics out of that survey until 2008. So, you know, nobody in my state cares that there's 300 million people reading at the lowest level. They don't care. So, like I said, this is sort of the thing that we're constantly going up against. Yes?
I was just wondering, some of the most significant changes that were made, especially the establishment of the Literacy Office in D.C., were made using career lobbyists. And I'm trying to put this in sort of a Canadian perspective. Because, you know, that's sort of a pretty American kind of model, and I'm wondering what we have, and I guess my question is open to the floor, is how many of us have access to that kind of, you know, you talked about your consultants that helped you get those contacts, get those audiences, know when that deal is on the floor. And I know working from the university, we get people who come to us, and you know, I can help them with the, you know, articulating the problem, giving the theory, giving them the research and all of that kind of stuff. But we're not, and we'll get the floor running if we can, but we're not lobbyists.
Yeah.
And there's a really important skill. And to my knowledge, I don't know of anybody who has kind of, maybe some of you have, that's why I'm opening it up, who has that political savvy at that time. I don't even know that our Canadian model of government actually is open to that as much as it is in the United States. So that was just something to think about as you're speaking. I mean, I think it's amazing just to get, you know, to the place where you have, given everything that you've been up against, even statewide and with Katrina and everything. But I'm just wondering, you know, whether we have barriers to that kind of, you know, getting our foot through the door with the government that way. Maybe somebody has.
We certainly must have, we have lobbyists for